A single dad is humiliated in front of the entire school when he can't afford the fundraiser's minimum donation until a stranger in heels and a power suit writes a check that changes everything. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? The gym smelled like popcorn and budget cologne. Streamers hung limp in the humidity of too many people packed into too small a space. Jack Collins stood near the back, one hand on Lily's shoulder, the other in his coat pocket, thumb tracing the edge of his last $20 bill, like it might magically multiply. Principal Harmon stepped up to the mic with a grin that hadn't changed since Jack was a student here himself. "Let's get those pledges rolling in. Our goal tonight is $10,000 for the new music program. Who wants to start us off?" The front row erupted. A dad in a tailored blazer shouted, "1,000 from the Morgan family!" Applause. A mom with a pearl necklace raised her hand. "$750 from us!" More claps, louder this time. It became a contest. The louder the pledge, the brighter the spotlight. Jack glanced down at Lily. Her eyes were wide, fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. She looked up at him like she was asking for something without saying a word. A woman in front of them turned. "What about you two?" she asked, smiling in that way people do when they expect a polite decline. Jack cleared his throat. $20? The mic screeched. Someone coughed. It wasn't loud laughter, but it was enough. A ripple. A few smirks. One boy whispered to his mom, too loudly, "That's not even enough for one drumstick." Lily's cheeks burned. She looked down, her chin trembling. Jack felt it like a punch. He'd thought maybe, just maybe, they could blend in tonight, do their part, be enough. But now he stood under the fluorescent lights, with judgment hanging in the air like smoke. He hated that Lily had to see this, hated that being good wasn't always good enough. And just when he thought it couldn't get worse, a voice echoed from the back of the gym, "I'll cover the rest." Heads turned. A tall woman stood near the doors, arms crossed, expression unreadable. She didn't give a name, just nodded toward the mic. "Put me down for whatever's left." Silence, then gasps, then a murmur. Jack didn't move. Neither did Lily, because sometimes, when the world decides you're invisible, someone walks in and looks straight at you. She didn't belong there, not by the way she stood, not in that crowded gym with its creaky bleachers and sticky linoleum floors. While everyone else shifted in their seats, fiddled with phones or whispered behind cupped hands, she stood perfectly still in the back row, tall, composed, like silence had settled around her. Her coat was black, long, tailored, the kind people in town didn't wear because there weren't places here that asked for that kind of elegance. Her hair was pinned back like she was late for a meeting, but not hurried. Her heels made no sound on the gym floor, and somehow, when she moved, people noticed without knowing why. The awkward pause from Jack's donation still hung in the air. A few chuckles had faded, replaced now with the uncomfortable shuffling of people unsure how to transition. Principal Harmon was clearing his throat again, fumbling with the mic as if static would soften the moment. Then her voice came, not loud, not sharp, but somehow it cut through everything. "I'll cover the rest." People turned, necks craning. A dozen eyes widened. Harmon froze. She stepped forward just enough to be seen, but not enough to command. "Whatever amount is left to reach your goal, I'll take care of it. Full donation." There was no offer of a checkbook, no dramatic pause, just a calm certainty that said she was serious. Principal Harmon blinked. Well, that's very generous. Thank you. May I ask your name for the record?" She shook her head once. "Anonymous is fine." The room buzzed. Whispers spread like spilled soda. Parents leaned into each other, murmuring guesses and half-formed theories. Jack just stood there, still holding Lily's shoulder. She looked up at him, then toward the woman, her brows furrowed like she was trying to place her. The woman's eyes met Jack's. Just for a moment. No smile, no nod. But something passed between them, a recognition of a kind neither could name yet. Then she stepped back into the shadows of the gym's edge, like a ghost who'd done her part. And the fundraiser went on, but nobody forgot the woman who didn't clap, didn't boast, didn't flinch, just gave. By Monday morning, the whispers had taken root. At drop-off, they clung to the air like fog. Parents didn't say much to Jack directly, but they looked a little longer, smiled a little tighter, nodded a beat too late. He knew the look. Sympathy dressed up like small talk. One mom in yoga pants murmured something about courage as she passed. Another said brave under her breath like it was a compliment. Jack didn't respond. He just kissed Lily on the head and told her to have a good day. He didn't need their pity, and he sure didn't need their opinions. The town had a way of remembering people by their worst moment. A late mortgage, a car that broke down in the supermarket lot, a fundraiser you couldn't afford. Everyone smiled in public, but Jack had lived here long enough to know how fast silence could become judgment. At the garage, he buried himself in work. Oil changes, a rusted-out minivan that needed a new transmission, anything that kept his hands too busy to think. He didn't want to replay that night, didn't want to hear the echo of Lily's voice gone quiet beside him. He just wanted it to fade. But that evening, Lily came bursting through the front door like nothing had ever gone wrong. "Dad, guess what?" she said, peeling off her jacket and nearly tripping over her boots. Jack looked up from the stove. "What's that, kiddo?" "There's a new girl in class. Her name's Ellie. She's really cool. She brought apples and helped Miss Garrett carry the books." He smiled, relieved by her energy. "That's nice. Did you eat all your lunch?" "And her mom came after school to help clean up the gym," Lily added, pausing just long enough to glance at him. "She's really pretty, wears black boots like the ones in the movies." Jack's stirring hand paused. "She didn't say much," Lily continued, "but she helped with the chairs and picked up all the glitter that got everywhere. Miss Garrett said she was a quiet helper." Jack didn't reply. He just stared at the pot of boiling pasta. Because somewhere in the back of his mind he knew. Glitter, black boots, quiet helper. The woman in the back row hadn't disappeared. She'd just stepped closer. The morning came dressed in pale sunlight and leftover frost, the kind that clung stubbornly to windshields and made everything feel slower than it should be. Jack rubbed his hands together, the breath from his lungs clouding the air as he waited in the drop-off line. Lily sat in the passenger seat, legs swinging, her backpack hugged tight to her chest. "Do you think Ellie'll be at school early again?" she asked, excitement tucked into her voice like a secret. "Maybe," Jack said, eyes scanning the sidewalk. "Guess you'll find out in a minute." The line inched forward. Kids spilled from cars like ants, backpacks bouncing, jackets half-zipped. The usual chaos of elementary school mornings, loud, messy, alive. But then he saw it. Parked across the street was a vehicle that didn't belong. Not here, not among the weathered sedans and rusted-out SUVs of Willow Creek. It was a sleek, charcoal-colored Range Rover, spotless, tinted windows. The kind of car you'd see in magazines or rolling past valet stands not across from a row of second-hand minivans. From the driver's side, she stepped out. Black slacks, wool coat, boots that hit the pavement like they had somewhere important to be. Her dark hair was tucked into a low, deliberate bun, and even in the early morning haze, she looked like someone who didn't run late or forget permission slips. She wasn't doing anything, just watching. Calm, still. Her hands were in her coat pockets, and her eyes followed the children as they passed by, like she was seeing something worth remembering. Jack's gaze lingered. It wasn't the car. It wasn't the way she stood, regale, without trying. It was the unmistakable feeling that she had been here before, that she had watched him before. She caught his eyes just for a moment. No wave, no smile, just a glance, measured, quiet, certain. Then she looked away, stepped back into her car, and the Range Rover rolled forward like it had never stopped. Lily jumped out of the truck, waving. "Bye, Dad." Jack waved back, but his eyes stayed on the street. Because some people enter quietly and somehow still take up all the space. By the end of the week, Lily wouldn't stop talking about Ellie. She draws dragons that look real, like with shadows and everything, she said at dinner, her fork hovering above her mac and cheese. And she knows how to play chess, like actual chess, not the kind where I make up rules. Jack chuckled, reaching for the salt. Sounds like she's got some skills. She brought edamame in her lunch today, Lily added, eyes wide like it was a mythical food. And these little carrot sticks shaped like stars. I asked where she got them, and she said her chef makes her lunch. Jack paused mid-chew. Her chef? Lily nodded. Yeah, and she had these sparkly shoes with red bottoms. Everyone said they're really expensive. I asked her what brand they were, and she said something like, Louboutin? Jack coughed into his napkin. Louboutin? Yeah, that. Lily didn't seem fazed. But she's not snooty or anything. She shared her cookies, and she let me use her special markers even though they came from Italy. Jack smiled, but there was a tug at the corner of his chest. Not jealousy, not even discomfort, just something soft and uncertain, like watching your kid walk toward a world you've never stepped into yourself. He knew what rich looked like from the outside, fancy cars, private schools, vacation homes, but Ellie didn't come off that way, not through Lily's stories. She sounded curious, kind, down to earth in a way that didn't match her diamond-studded backpack. Still, Jack couldn't help wondering what a kid like Ellie was doing in a town like theirs. Later that night, as he folded laundry, he found a crumpled drawing in Lily's jacket pocket. 2 girls holding hands, one with freckles, the other with a tiara, and those unmistakable red-bottom shoes. He smiled at the title scrawled across the top in purple marker, Me and Ellie, Best Friends. And below it, in tinier writing, she says, I'm magic too. Jack folded the drawing gently, tucked it into a drawer with the important stuff, report cards, birthday cards, and now apparently the first piece of proof that Lily had found someone who saw her exactly as she was. They were walking home from the corner store when Lily brought it up, just dropped it into the conversation like it was nothing. Ellie's mom helped us paint the reading wall today. Jack glanced down at her, shifting the grocery bag to his other hand. She did? Yeah, she wore jeans. Real ones. Not the ones that look like jeans but are secretly stretchy. He smirked. That's oddly specific. Well, it matters, Lily said seriously, because all the other moms wear heels and whisper a lot. But Ellie's mom rolled up her sleeves and got paint on her elbow. She didn't even care. Jack let that settle. For some reason, it didn't match the image he had in his head of the woman in the black coat, the woman who stared down an entire fundraiser with a single sentence and disappeared into tinted windows like a ghost. She also brought snacks, Lily added, but like the cool kind, not store stuff. She made muffins with hidden vegetables, but they tasted like chocolate. Even Mason liked them, and he thinks ketchup is spicy. Jack laughed under his breath. Sounds like she's got magic powers. She's different, Lily said, kicking a pebble down the sidewalk. Not like the other moms. She listens. When I was telling Ellie about my favorite book, her mom actually sat down on the rug and asked me to show her the pictures. Jack stopped short. That did it. The woman who gave a silent donation big enough to carry a school fundraiser, the woman with luxury boots and a Range Rover, and now, kneeling on a classroom carpet, looking at picture books with his daughter. Does Ellie talk about her mom a lot, Beth? He asked, trying to sound casual. Sometimes, Lily said. She says her mom used to be really busy and far away, but now she's trying to be present. Jack nodded slowly. He didn't say what he was thinking, that the woman who barely spoke in public had somehow become a regular presence in Lily's day. And it wasn't just the money or the muffins. It was the jeans, the paint, the way she listened. And for the first time in a long time, Jack found himself curious about someone, not because of what they had, but because of how they showed up. It was one of those mornings where everything felt a little off. The coffee machine sputtered, the wrench Jack needed had vanished, and the heater in the office was wheezing like it had the flu. He was halfway through changing the oil on a beat-up Honda when he heard the bell above the front door chime. A soft, brief sound, then nothing. Jack wiped his hands on a rag and stepped into the front office. No one was there, just a white envelope, sitting on the counter like it had placed itself. No stamp, no address, just his name, written in neat, confident handwriting. He glanced out the window, nothing but the usual rusted pickups and faded signage across the street. Whoever left it was already gone. Back inside, he sat at the desk and peeled the envelope open, cautious like it might bite. Inside was a crisp sheet of paper, thick, elegant stock, the kind people use for weddings or secrets. Jack unfolded it slowly. It read, "Mr. Collins, I heard about the school trip coming up. I know sometimes good kids miss out on good things for reasons that aren't fair. This time, let her go. It's covered. Signed, a fellow parent who believes in your girl." That was it. No signature, no return address, just that. Jack stared at it for a long time, not because he didn't understand, he did, perfectly, but because no one had ever stepped in like that before, quiet, direct, unasked. His first instinct was resistance. Pride flared in his chest like a reflex. He didn't want handouts, didn't want to feel like someone else saw them as charity. But then he thought about Lily's face when she came home with the permission slip, the way her eyes had dimmed a little when she asked, "It's okay if I don't go, right? We can do something fun here instead." He ran a hand through his hair and leaned back in the chair, the letter resting gently on the desk in front of him. Whoever this fellow parent was, they hadn't just sent money. They'd sent belief. And in a world that too often measured worth by wallets, someone had seen his daughter and thought she deserved the whole sky. The rain hit the pavement like it held a grudge, heavy, relentless, the kind that turned streets into rivers and made the town feel smaller, quieter. Jack was closing up the garage, pulling the chain on the bay door, when he saw the headlights flicker through the downpour. At first he figured someone was just pulling over for directions. People got lost around here all the time. But then the lights blinked once, then again, slower this time, like a call for help. Jack sighed, grabbed his coat, and stepped out into the storm. Water soaked his boots before he even hit the curb. The sleek silhouette of the car came into view, low to the ground, paint gleaming under the street lamp like ink. European, expensive, definitely not from around here. He tapped lightly on the window. It rolled down just enough for him to see her, and in an instant the night turned strange. It was her, the woman from the back of the gym, the anonymous donor, the ghost who made the fundraiser stop and breathe. She looked different now. Her hair was damp, tendrils clinging to her cheek, no dramatic coat or perfect heels, just a tired woman in the driver's seat of a car that had given up on her halfway through a storm. "I think it just died," she said, voice calm but frustrated. "Battery, maybe. I wasn't far from home." Jack nodded, keeping his expression even. "Pop the hood. I'll take a look." She didn't argue, just reached for the lever and stepped out with him, holding a hand over her head like it might shield her from the downpour. He leaned in, tools already in hand. Ignoring the water soaking through his sleeves, she stood beside him, not saying much, just watching. Finally she asked, "You're Jack, right?" He paused, glancing at her. "You remembered?" he asked. "I try to remember the names of people who stand up without flinching." Jack didn't answer, just nodded and went back to work, the storm swirling around them, thunder low in the distance. Because sometimes the people who change your life don't crash in. They stall just outside your door in the middle of a storm. The car was still hissing when Jack waved her inside. "You'll catch a cold," he said, motioning toward the office. "Tea's not fancy, but it's hot." She hesitated only a moment before following him, rain dripping from her coat as she stepped through the door and into the warmth. The space was small, just a desk, 2 chairs, a bulletin board filled with oil change coupons, and a coffee maker that doubled as a water boiler. Jack poured hot water into 2 chipped mugs and dropped a tea bag into each. Chamomile okay? He asked. She nodded, accepting the mug with both hands. Perfect. For a while they sat in a silence that didn't feel awkward. Outside, the rain tapped against the window like it was trying to listen in. Jack leaned back in his chair, watching steam curl above his drink. She perched on the edge of the seat across from him, coat draped over the back, boots damp, eyes alert. "You always fix cars in the middle of a monsoon?" she asked, a faint smile playing at her lips. "Only when the driver's got a habit of showing up in storms," he replied, returning the smile before taking a sip. That made her laugh. Short, genuine, and gone too quickly. "You remembered me," she said. Jack shrugged. Hard to forget someone who shuts down a fundraiser with one sentence. She looked at her tea, the moment settling. "I wasn't trying to make a scene." "I don't think you were. That's what made it something." She glanced at him, something soft flickering behind her calm expression. "I believe in fixing things quietly." Jack tilted his head. "Even when they're not engines?" She smiled again, slower this time. "Especially then." There was a question behind her eyes, something unspoken. Jack felt it, but didn't chase it. He never did. That was the thing about conversations like this. You had to let them breathe. Instead, he asked, "You always drink tea with strange mechanics during breakdowns?" She met his gaze and, for the first time, let the answer show in her eyes. "Only the ones who don't ask for anything in return." And just like that, the tea cooled, the storm eased, and something between them warmed quietly in its place. The storm had eased to a drizzle by the time Jack slipped back under the hood. The engine had cooled, and with a bit of work and a new connection installed, the car was nearly ready to go. He moved around with the comfort of muscle memory, his hands knowing what to do, even as his mind lingered on the woman sipping tea inside. He'd met all kinds of people through the garage, farmers, single moms, truckers, even the occasional out-of-towner with a GPS that thought their rural roads were shortcuts. But no one like her, not with that voice, that silence, that calm. He moved to the passenger side to check the battery terminal one more time, opened the door, reached in for the glove box latch. Click. Inside was the usual mess: an emergency flashlight, a pack of mints, a forgotten pair of sunglasses, and a slim leather planner, nearly untouched. He reached for it, intending to move it aside, but the initials stopped him. MCS. The gold letters were pressed into the corner with clean precision. Understated. Expensive. He knew those initials. He'd seen them in magazines Lily brought home from the library for school projects. Forbes, Business Weekly. Covers about the woman reshaping tech or the billionaire no one knew. Always the same headline: Malene Claire Sinclair. Jack held the planner like it might burn through his hands. He flipped it open. Inside were neatly scribbled notes, conference calls, foundation meetings, a speaking event in D.C., and on one page a list with just 2 lines. 1. Pick Ellie up early, too. Remember what matters. His heart thudded. Back inside the office, she was still seated, eyes on the window, like she was watching the rain dream. Jack walked in quietly, set the planner on the counter beside her mug. "You dropped this." She didn't flinch, didn't try to explain, just looked at it, then at him. "So you know," she said softly. He nodded. "I do now." Silence stretched, not heavy but full. She stood, slipping the planner into her coat pocket. "I wasn't trying to hide, just trying to see what life looked like without a spotlight." Jack looked at her, this woman who fixed things quietly, who helped without needing credit, who sat in classrooms and painted walls. "Turns out," he said, "you're a better mystery than most people's truth." And for the first time, Malene Sinclair smiled without guard. The next morning broke crisp and clear, the kind of autumn day that felt like a deep breath after too much noise. The storm had scrubbed the sky clean, and the early sun stretched gold over the rooftops as Jack rolled open the garage door. He was halfway through unlocking the front office when he saw the car. Same sleek silhouette, same quiet hum, parked neatly at the curb like it belonged there. But this time, it didn't pull away. The door opened and she stepped out. No heels today, just worn boots and jeans, hair down, swept behind her ears. She looked different without the storm, more real, less untouchable. In her hands, a white paper bag and a cardboard drink tray. Jack raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. Broken wiper blades this time?" Malene smiled, walking toward him. "No car trouble today. Thought I'd come by before the school rush." She held out the bag. "For Lily. Blueberry muffins. Organic, of course. Ellie insisted." Jack took it, surprised at how warm it still was. "You didn't have to." "I know," she said, "but I wanted to." There was a pause, not awkward, just unsure, like neither of them knew what this was supposed to be. Then she asked, almost shyly, "Want to grab coffee sometime?" Jack blinked. She shrugged a little, adjusting her grip on the tray. Not charity, not business, just coffee, with someone who makes really bad jokes and fixes engines better than most CEOs fix companies. He smirked. "You're not wrong about the jokes." "So that's a yes?" Jack glanced inside the garage. The day hadn't started yet. The office smelled like old paper and coolant, and outside stood a woman who could buy half the state, but was offering something far more valuable: time, intention, curiosity. He nodded. "Yeah, coffee sounds good." Malene's smile widened, relaxed, unguarded. She handed him the drink tray. "I already brought the first round." And just like that, she turned back toward her car. No speech, no flair, just the quiet rhythm of something beginning, too real to name out loud. The diner was nothing special. Cracked vinyl booths, syrup bottles stuck to the table, and a jukebox in the corner that hadn't worked properly since the late 90s. But the coffee was strong, the pancakes were cheap, and the staff knew everyone's name by their second visit. When Malene stepped inside, heads turned, subtly, but unmistakably. Jack had chosen the booth by the window, figuring she might feel less caged there. He didn't expect her to walk in like she'd been there 100 times before. She wore a navy sweater, no jewelry, hair tied in a loose braid that made her look more like someone's sister than the woman who'd been on the cover of Forbes. She slid into the booth across from him like it was the most normal thing in the world. "Do they have oat milk here?" she asked, looking around with a mischievous smile. Jack snorted. "They barely have milk." "Perfect," she said, picking up a menu she clearly had no intention of reading. The waitress came over, eyes narrowing just a bit. "Usual for you, Jack?" she asked, then looked at Malene. "And for you, hun?" "I'll have whatever he's having," she said, then added, "unless he orders something weird." "Too late," Jack said. "Hope you like eggs with hot sauce and too much pepper." Malene grinned. "I've survived Silicon Valley boardrooms. I'll manage." They talked. About nothing at first, weather, town quirks, the fact that Jack's old Civic was parked outside with a bumper sticker that read, "If it ain't broke, you're not looking hard enough." But then it shifted. She asked about engines, not the way people do when they're being polite, but like she actually wanted to know. "Why do you like fixing things?" she asked, stirring her coffee with a chipped spoon. Jack shrugged. "Because they don't lie. You figure out what's wrong, you fix it. People don't come with check engine lights." That made her laugh, really laugh, eyes crinkling, head tipping back just slightly. In that moment she didn't look like a billionaire, didn't look like someone with private jets or stock options. She looked like a woman who needed something honest. And Jack, for the first time in a long time, felt like maybe he had something worth giving. By the next morning, the town was already buzzing. Willow Creek didn't keep secrets. It held on to them for about 6 minutes before spinning them into stories. And the story now, richer with every retelling, was that Malene Sinclair, the woman with boots worth more than a year's rent, had been spotted laughing over eggs with Jack Collins at Minnie's diner. They were sitting together, Mrs. Corwin whispered to her neighbor in the grocery line, and she was smiling, not politely, like she meant it. "She drove him coffee last week," said the high school janitor, shaking his head. "My niece saw it. Hand-delivered. real fancy tray and everything. At the barber shop, someone swore they saw her car parked outside Jack's garage again. Didn't even send a driver, sat in the office with him for a whole hour like she had nowhere else to be. Even Principal Harmon mentioned it in the teacher's lounge. Well, I don't know if it's true, but if it is, she's got taste. Jack's a good man. Jack heard none of it firsthand, but he felt it. The lingering glances. The way people paused when he entered a room only to resume their conversations with a bit more sugar in their tone. Folks who hadn't said more than a nod in years now asked how business was, asked about Lily, asked about any new friend stopping by lately, with a wink that made his skin crawl. He didn't care much for attention, especially not this kind. It felt like being on display, like a prize he hadn't asked to win. But when Malene walked into the garage again that Thursday afternoon, with oil stains on the floor and the radio playing too loud, she looked at him the same way she had in the diner. Like he was just Jack, no whispers, no weight. She handed him a cinnamon roll wrapped in wax paper. "No coffee this time?" he asked, smirking. She shrugged. "I figured you'd like a little gossip fuel." And just like that, the rumors kept spinning. But Jack? He just kept showing up. Same wrench, same boots, same quiet feeling that something rare was unfolding, and for once the town could keep talking. He was too busy living the part they couldn't understand. It started with a folded note in Lily's backpack, written in purple ink with glittery stickers at the corners. "Hey, Lily, want to come over this weekend? My mom said yes if your dad's okay with it. I have a treehouse and a smoothie machine. Ellie." Jack read it twice, blinking at the words smoothie machine, like it was code for something futuristic. He looked at Lily, who was bouncing on her toes, barely able to contain her excitement. "She has a room just for Legos, Dad. A whole room." He smiled, trying to keep his voice level. "I guess that's a yes from you." Lily nodded so fast he worried her neck might snap. "Is it okay if I go?" He hesitated just for a second. The image of Malene's sleek Range Rover and her quiet wealth contrasted sharply with their lived-in apartment and creaky furniture. But then he remembered the muffins, the painted reading wall, the way Malene listened when Lily spoke. "Yeah," he said, "it's okay." Saturday afternoon arrived with rain threatening the sky again, the clouds rolling in low and heavy. But the car pulled up right on time. Malene stepped out in jeans and a casual jacket, her hair pulled back in a loose twist. Jack opened the door, and Lily darted past him, backpack already slung over her shoulder. "Hi, Miss Malene." "Hey, Lily," Malene said, crouching to meet her eye level. "Ellie's been setting up a treasure hunt since breakfast. You ready?" "Ready." Jack stepped forward. "Thanks again for the invite." Malene stood and met his gaze. "It's not just for her, Jack. Ellie doesn't open up easily, but she talks about Lily like she's the sun." That caught him off guard. The ride up the hill took them past fields Jack had only ever seen from below. At the very top, hidden behind tall trees and iron gates, was a house that didn't belong to their town. Glass walls, wraparound decks, the kind of place architects used for bragging rights. But what Lily remembered most wasn't the mansion. It was the dog that greeted her like an old friend, the pancakes shaped like animals, the treehouse that Malene helped build herself. And for Jack, watching the car disappear around the bend, something tugged inside, because for the first time, Lily wasn't stepping into someone else's world. She was being welcomed into it. Jack wasn't sure what he expected, but it wasn't this. The gate had opened with a quiet hum when he arrived, the kind of automatic motion that usually led to polished marble floors, stiff greetings, and someone offering him sparkling water he couldn't pronounce. Instead, the driveway curved gently past wild rose bushes and opened into a wide, open space that looked less like a billionaire's mansion and more like a home. He parked and stepped out slowly, taking it all in. The house sprawled low and wide across the hill, modern and airy, but there were no signs of formality, no suited staff waiting at the door. No clipped heels clicking down a grand staircase, just a golden retriever napping on the porch and the faint sound of laughter echoing from inside. He knocked once, more out of habit than necessity, and the door creaked open before he could try again. Malene stood barefoot on the polished wood floor, wearing an oversized sweatshirt and leggings, her hair in a loose bun that looked like it had fought gravity all day. The smell of grilled cheese wafted behind her. "Hey," she said, smiling. "You're just in time. Lily and Ellie are finishing their art battle. Apparently it's very competitive." Jack blinked. "You cook?" She laughed. "You say that like it's shocking. I just figured there'd be a chef, or at least someone with an apron and a Bluetooth earpiece. Nope, just me, a pan, and an embarrassing amount of cheese options." He stepped inside, and the warmth hit him like a wave. The walls were lined with books. A pile of board games sat by the fireplace. There were fingerprints on the windows, and a couch that had clearly been jumped on too many times to still be called new. And then he heard Lily's voice from the back room. "Dad, we made grilled cheese with goat cheese and honey. It's so weird, but so good." Jack followed the sound, still trying to adjust to the feeling that nothing here was curated, nothing staged. Just Malene Sinclair, billionaire tech mogul, barefoot in her kitchen, flipping sandwiches with a spatula and humming along to the radio. He looked at her, then the house, then back again. "You ever get tired of surprising me?" She smirked without looking up. "Not yet." And somehow, that felt more real than any spotlight ever could. It was late by the time the girls finally crashed. Ellie curled up in a nest of pillows, Lily half asleep with a sketchbook still resting on her chest. Jack had offered to take her home hours ago, but Malene had just waved a hand and said, "They're building something important. Let them finish." Now the house was quiet, lit by warm lamplight and the soft flicker of a dying fire. Jack sat on the back deck with a mug of something hot he couldn't quite name. The stars stretched wide above them like a sky too big to waste. Malene joined him barefoot again, wrapping a throw blanket around her shoulders. For a long time they didn't say much, just listened to the wind move through the trees and the occasional creak of the house settling. Then, without turning to him, she asked it, "What would you do if money wasn't a problem?" Jack chuckled, low and reflexive. "Buy a truck that doesn't rattle when it hits 45. She smiled but didn't let him off the hook. "I'm serious." He looked down at his mug, steam curling against the cool air. "I don't know," he said. "I've never thought about it." "You've never let yourself think about it," she corrected gently. He sighed, leaned back in the chair. "When Lily's mom passed, the only dream I had was keeping the lights on, fixing one car to pay for groceries, fixing another to pay rent. That became the dream, survive the week." Malene didn't interrupt. She just waited. Jack shook his head slowly. "I used to want to build something, a place where kids who didn't want college but knew how to work with their hands could come and learn. A garage, sure, but more than that, a chance." She turned to face him now, eyes soft. "That's not a small dream, Jack." "No," he said. "It's just always felt like someone else's." They sat there, the silence full of something unspoken. Respect, maybe, or understanding, or both. Because in a world that measured success in zeros and headlines, Jack had never been asked what he'd do if he didn't have to fight for every inch. And now, finally, someone had. The envelope was too elegant for anything casual. Heavy paper, deep navy with silver lettering, his name printed in a font so sharp it could cut glass. Jack found it in his mailbox, wedged between a grocery flyer and a bill marked "Final Notice." No return address, just the same initials embossed at the seal, MCS. Inside, a card with perfectly spaced lines. "You're invited to the Sinclair Foundation Gala. Guest of Malene Sinclair. Formal attire required. Friday, 7:00 p.m., Carlton House." Jack stared at it like it might rewrite itself if he waited long enough. That night, he left it on the counter while he made dinner. Lily spotted it before he could even pretend it didn't matter. Her eyes widened. A gala? It's just a work thing, he said too fast. A fancy work thing, she said, picking up the card like it was glowing. Did Miss Moline really invite you? Jack nodded, setting down a pot of boiling pasta. Looks like it. You're going, right? He hesitated. Lily, I don't have a suit. I don't have the shoes. I don't even know which fork to use at those things. Lily crossed her arms in that way she did when she was absolutely, positively not budging. You fixed her car in the rain and gave her chamomile tea in a mug with a chip in it. I think you can handle a few forks. Jack tried to hold back the smile, but it broke through anyway. Besides, she added, climbing onto a kitchen stool, you're smart, kind, and handsome. That's better than any tux. He gave her a look. Where'd you get that line? Ellie's mom, she said, grinning. Jack chuckled, shaking his head. Of course she said that. But later that night, while Lily slept, Jack dug an old garment bag out of the back of his closet. It held a suit he hadn't worn since a cousin's wedding 5 years ago. The pants still fit. Mostly. The jacket needed pressing. The shoes, well, they weren't shined, but they had laces. He looked in the mirror and didn't see a mechanic or a widower or a man surviving week to week. He saw someone Moline Sinclair thought was worth standing beside, and for once he didn't argue with her. The Carlton house glittered like something from another world. Golden chandeliers hung like upside-down constellations, and the walls shimmered with soft candlelight that probably cost more than his month's rent. Jack stood just inside the grand ballroom, tugging at his collar for the third time in 5 minutes, trying to pretend he wasn't already sweating through his shirt. The suit fit, barely. The shoes pinched, and everyone around him looked like they belonged in magazines, women in gowns that flowed like rivers, men with pocket squares folded to military precision, champagne flutes balanced effortlessly in hands that had never changed a tire. Jack felt like a grease stain in the middle of a crystal display. He spotted her across the room before she saw him. Moline, radiant in a navy dress that caught the light when she moved, laughing softly with some exec in a tux who looked like he brushed his teeth with stock tips. Then she looked up, and everything shifted. She smiled, not the kind you save for cameras or investors, the real one, the one that said, "There you are." Jack exhaled. She walked over her steps easy, as if she'd just come down the steps of his garage and not into a room full of billionaires. "I was starting to think you'd changed your mind," she said. "I almost did," he admitted. "But then Lily told me I was smart, kind, and handsome. Hard to argue with that." Moline laughed, slipping her arm through his. They made their way through clusters of guests. Jack nodded politely, sipped from a glass he didn't ask for, and tried not to trip on the rug. People asked him questions with polite interest but vacant eyes. "What firm are you with? Are you in development? Tech or media?" "No," he said more than once. "I fix cars." Raised brows, awkward smiles. Then came the man with the expensive cufflinks and an air of practiced condescension. "And what do you do exactly?" Jack didn't flinch. "I fix what people give up on." The words hung there, crisp and deliberate. Moline turned her head slightly toward him, and he saw it, that quiet pride in her eyes. And for the first time all night, Jack didn't feel out of place. He just felt seen. It started with a ping. Jack was elbow-deep in the undercarriage of a pickup the next morning when his phone buzzed once, then again, then in a stuttering stream like it had caught a virus, made entirely of chaos. He wiped his hands, tugged off his gloves, and checked the screen. Text from Lily's teacher. "Mr. Collins, is this you in this article?" A message from an old friend he hadn't heard from in years. "Bro, you clean up nice. Who is she?" He clicked the link. Moline Sinclair's new mystery man? The headline was bold, shameless, and floating above a photo that nearly made him drop his phone. There he was, standing beside Moline at the gala, mid-laugh, hand resting awkwardly on the back of her chair. She looked effortlessly elegant. He looked like a deer that had just been offered caviar. Jack's jaw tightened. By noon it was everywhere, gossip sites, business blogs, even a local station's social media feed. The captions varied, but the tone was the same. Who is he? Where did she find him? What's the story behind the mechanic with the billionaire? At first he tried to ignore it, but by the time a customer asked if he offered celebrity tune-ups now, Jack had had enough. He stormed into the break room and pulled out his phone. One tap, then another. He didn't even hesitate before calling her. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey, Jack." "Did you know this would happen?" Her voice was calm. "I figured there might be some attention, yes." "You could have warned me," he snapped. "I've got people asking me if I'm your bodyguard, your charity case, your project." "Oh, you're none of those things," she said gently. "Doesn't seem to matter," he muttered. "Everyone's already written the headline." There was a pause on her end. Then, steady as ever, she said, "Jack, you stood next to me. That's all. You didn't ask for anything. You didn't pose. You just were. That's what made it real." He exhaled, slow and heavy. "I don't want to be a headline," he said. "I know," she said, "but maybe you were always meant to be part of the story." And somehow that made it worse and better, all at once. The sun had dipped below the hills, casting long shadows across Maline's driveway by the time Jack pulled up. He didn't text, didn't call, just showed up, jaw tight, heart hammering harder than it had when he'd first kissed her hand at the gala. She opened the door before he knocked, like she'd been waiting for this moment. "Hey," she said, cautious. He didn't waste time. "Was this all for show?" Her brow furrowed. "What?" "The gala, the photo, the news? Was I just the charming local color, some heartwarming story to soften your brand?" She stared at him, stunned for a beat. "Is that what you think?" "I don't know what to think, Malene," he said, pacing the gravel like it could burn off the nerves. "One minute we're talking over tea in the garage, and the next I'm on the internet being picked apart like I'm some feel-good headline. No warning, no heads up, just thrown in." She stepped closer, calm but firm. "Jack, I didn't orchestrate that photo. I didn't write the story." "But you knew it would happen," he shot back. "You live in that world. You knew it would follow you." "I also knew you could handle it." His eyes snapped to hers. "You think I wanted this?" "No," she said, steady. "But I thought you wouldn't run from it." Jack exhaled, bitter. "You don't get it. I spent years trying to keep Lily's life simple, honest. Now I've got people calling me things I don't even recognize." Maline's expression softened. "That's not about pity, Jack. That's about respect. I invited you because I wanted you there." But he didn't hear it, not fully. Pride had already closed the door between them. He stepped back. "Maybe we're from different worlds for a reason." She opened her mouth to respond, but he was already walking away. Down the steps, across the gravel, back to his truck, back to the safety of silence. The kind that doesn't heal, but hides. Behind him, the porch light flicked on. And inside, Malene stood holding words she didn't get to say. The change was quiet, almost too quiet. No SUV at drop-off, no cinnamon muffins for Lily, no glimpses of black boots standing at the edge of the playground, watching like she always used to. At first, Jack told himself she was busy. Meetings, travel. People like Malene Sinclair didn't just disappear, they got called away. But by the end of the week, Ellie was gone too. Lily came home with a drawing folded in her backpack, a goodbye note scrawled in sparkly ink. "My mom says we're going to be gone for a while. I'll miss you. Love, Ellie." Jack stared at the note longer than he wanted to admit. He didn't ask questions. Not to Lily, not to anyone. He just tightened his grip on routine. Back to mornings with cereal and mismatched socks. Back to long days at the garage, elbow-deep in engines, letting the hum of tools drown out everything else. He didn't speak her name, didn't check the news, didn't go near the places where she used to be. People stopped asking after a while. The whispers died down. The article faded into page 3, replaced by newer rumors, newer stories. And Jack let it all fade. Except it didn't really. He'd still reach for 2 coffee cups some mornings before catching himself. Still glance toward the school parking lot, half expecting to see that Range Rover tucked beneath the trees. But it never came. And so he told himself what he always did when life veered off the road. Some things just aren't meant to stay. Malene Sinclair was a flash in their quiet life. A spark, maybe. A storm. But not someone built for staying. Not in a town where people noticed if you changed your brand of bread. Lily stopped asking, too. Maybe kids just knew when something wasn't coming back. Or maybe she was pretending the way Jack was. He smiled more, laughed when he was supposed to, said, "We're fine," when someone asked. And every night, he locked up the garage and told himself the truth he wished felt real. It's over. She's gone. And it's better this way, even if he didn't believe it. He wasn't even looking for it. It was just another Monday. Grease under his nails, the scent of motor oil in the air, the radio muttering country songs through static. Jack stopped at the diner to grab coffee, nodding to Minnie behind the counter, same as always. But on the way out, the stack of local newspapers caught his eye. Not the headlines, the photo. There she was, Malene Sinclair, hair swept back, smile soft, standing behind a podium with a plaque that read, Sinclair Foundation Community Fund. But it wasn't her face that made Jack freeze. It was the words beneath the picture. Scholarship launched in local girl's name. The Lily Collins Opportunity Fund aims to support girls in rural schools with big dreams and limited means. Jack stood there, paper in hand, coffee cooling in the other, heart stumbling. He read the article 3 times, each word heavier than the last. Malene Sinclair, tech innovator and philanthropist, announced today the launch of a new scholarship initiative aimed at rural youth. The fund, named in honor of a young student from Willow Creek, will prioritize girls with leadership potential, artistic talent, or a passion for building and fixing things. No interviews, no press tour, just a quiet release tucked between the sports section and church announcements. Jack sat in his truck for a long time, paper still open across his lap. She hadn't told him, hadn't called, hadn't sent so much as a message, just disappeared, and left behind a legacy in his daughter's name. He didn't know whether to be angry or humbled, maybe both. Lily's laugh echoed in his memory, how she talked about Malene's grilled cheese, the treehouse, the way she'd once said, "Miss Malene listens to people with her whole face." And now this, a scholarship, not for Ellie, not for Malene, but for Lily, for girls like her who dream too big for towns this small. Jack folded the paper carefully. No anger left, just something raw, something that felt like hope, dressed in someone else's handwriting. She might have disappeared from his life, but her shadow was still reaching for theirs, in the kindest way. The gym hadn't changed, same creaky bleachers, same streamers taped to the walls, same folding chairs lined up like soldiers, their legs scuffed and slightly uneven. The PTA had gone with blue and silver this year, school colors, Jack figured, but the theme didn't matter. The air still carried the same cocktail of cheap perfume, popcorn, and nervous energy. Jack stood near the back just like before, one hand in his pocket, the other gripping a plain white envelope. Inside was $50, his best for the month. Nothing fancy, nothing headline-worthy. But this time, he wasn't here to hide. Principal Harmon tapped the mic again, still awkward, still trying to fill the room with his booming optimism. "Let's kick off this year's fundraiser with open hearts and open hands. Every dollar helps our kids grow." People began calling out numbers. A few parents pledged $500. Some of the bigger names threw out 4 figures, smiling as their names echoed across the room. Applause followed, polite and predictable. Jack stepped forward. He didn't raise his hand high, just enough to be seen. "50, he said. The room stilled for a breath, enough to notice, enough to remember last year. But this time there was no uncomfortable cough, no whispers, no smirks. Instead, applause, not thunderous, not dramatic, but real. A couple of parents nodded, one even smiled. And from across the room, Mrs. Corwin, the same woman who once asked, "What about you two?" clapped a little louder than she needed to. Jack sat down slowly, folding the envelope against his knee. He didn't look around for approval, didn't need it. What mattered was that Lily had asked him that morning, "Are you going?" And when he'd said yes, she'd grinned like he'd already won something. He didn't see Malene, not in the crowd, not near the exits. But her name was still on the donor list, quietly tucked at the bottom, under Anonymous. As the fundraiser continued, Jack leaned back in his chair and let the noise wash over him. No spotlights, no headlines, just $50 honestly given. And for the first time it felt like more than enough. It wasn't until halfway through the slideshow, photos of kids painting birdhouses and building science fair volcanoes, that Jack saw her. At first he thought he was imagining things. Maybe the lighting played a trick. Maybe someone else wore the same shade of green, stood with the same stillness. But when he looked again, he knew. Malene, no cameras, no press, no polished speech waiting on a teleprompter. She stood in the very back of the gym, near the emergency exit, hands clasped in front of her, like she wasn't sure whether she belonged here anymore. She wasn't dressed for a gala or a board meeting, just a soft sweater, dark jeans, and the same boots that once tracked rain into his garage. Jack didn't move, didn't speak. He just watched her, and she watched him, like two people standing across a canyon they didn't know how to cross. The slideshow ended. Applause erupted. Principal Harmon thanked sponsors, rattled off raffle prizes, and made jokes that barely landed. But Jack heard none of it, not with her there, not with that look in her eyes. It wasn't polished. It wasn't distant. It was something raw, like she'd rehearsed 100 things to say, but decided instead to show up with none of them. Their eyes met again. No smile, no wave. But something passed between them, quiet, heavy, unfinished. Jack turned back to face the stage, unsure what to do with the knot in his chest, but knowing one thing for certain, she hadn't stayed gone. And whatever reason had pulled her away, something else had brought her back. The chairs scraped against the floor as people shuffled out, murmuring their goodbyes and wrangling kids high on sugar cookies and excitement. Jack stayed seated until the last of the crowd filtered through the double doors, the echoes of laughter and closing conversations fading into the cool night. When he finally stood, the gym was nearly empty. Nearly. Malene was still there, leaning against the far wall beneath a banner that read, "Together we grow." Her arms were folded, but not tightly. Her posture held no defense, just patience. Jack walked toward her slowly, each step louder than it should have been, in the hush that followed the crowd. They stood in silence for a long moment. "I didn't think I'd see you again," he said. "I wasn't sure I'd come," she replied. "But then Ellie asked if Lily still had the scarf she made her. She said she misses her. I figured maybe we both did." Jack nodded. "She kept that scarf, wore it even when it got too warm, said it made her feel brave." Malene looked down, then back at him. "I never meant to disappear." "I know," he said, "but you did." She didn't flinch. "I thought I was protecting you. From attention, from headlines, from being dragged into a life you never asked for." Jack studied her. "You don't get to decide what I can handle." "I know," she whispered. "That was my mistake." They were quiet again, the gym humming gently from a vent overhead. "You know what Lily said to me after that gala photo went viral?" Jack asked, voice low. "She said, you looked happy, like you forgot to be careful." Malene's eyes shimmered, but she held his gaze. "I was happy," he said. "But I was also scared, because for the first time I felt like I mattered. And I didn't know if it was because of who I was or because of who you were." She stepped closer. "It was always because of who you were, Jack. You didn't need a spotlight. You became one." He exhaled, everything inside him loosening all at once. In that wide, empty gym, where they had once stood worlds apart, there was no wealth, no headlines, no difference. Just two people stitched together by silence, regret, and the unmistakable truth of being seen. And this time, neither of them looked away. The night had settled heavy and quiet, the kind that feels softer after a storm has finally passed. The school's parking lot was mostly empty now, just a few stray candy wrappers caught in the breeze and the hum of old street lamps flickering overhead. One buzzed, then blinked out for a second before sputtering back to life. Jack walked Malene to her car, even though she didn't ask him to, even though she didn't need him to, but she didn't stop him either. They didn't say much. Not after the gym, not after the kind of conversation that leaves your heart a little raw and your guard a little down. When they reached her SUV, she turned to face him. Her arms weren't crossed anymore. Her shoulders weren't high with tension. She just stood there, looking at him like she was seeing something familiar for the first time again. "You know," she said softly, "for a guy who says he's not good at people, you're kind of terrible at pretending." He smirked. "Takes one to know one." The street lamp above them flickered again, casting a quick burst of light, then dipping them into shadows. She stepped a little closer. "So what now?" Jack didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached up, slowly, carefully, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Her eyes closed for just a second, like touch was something she didn't realize she'd been waiting for. "I missed you," he said. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "I missed you too." And then it happened. No build-up, no music. Just two tired people standing in a quiet parking lot, the scent of distant rain still lingering in the air. Their lips met, tentative at first, then real. There was no grand sweep, no movie-perfect embrace, just warmth, familiarity. The quiet sigh of two hearts finally catching up to what they'd known for a long time. When they pulled apart, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to, because in that one moment, under cheap lights and cracked pavement, it wasn't about how it looked, it was about how it felt, and it felt like home. The first thing Jack noticed wasn't the money, it was the blueprint. It showed up one morning, rolled into a tube with a red ribbon, and left on his workbench like a gift from some architectural Santa Claus. He unrolled it slowly, eyes scanning line after line of sketches and notations. It wasn't just a renovation plan, it was a reimagination. Expanded bays, a classroom off the back, lifts, tools, and benches marked student stations. A corner labeled Mentor Lounge, another called Hands-on Hope. He didn't need to check the signature in the corner. Malene Sinclair. Later that day, she stood beside him in the middle of the grease-streaked garage, wearing a leather jacket over a flannel shirt that looked suspiciously like one of his. She handed him a folder. Simple, clean, no drama. Inside, funding agreements, permits, donation paperwork. He stared at her. "Why?" She didn't miss a beat. "Because you said once you wanted to build something for kids like you used to be. And I'm not letting that dream sit in a glove box." "It's too much," he said, shaking his head. This is a whole new building." "No," she said, stepping closer. "This is a beginning. You fix what people give up on, remember? Now it's time to teach them how." Jack swallowed hard, the words catching behind the lump in his throat. He thought of all the kids who'd walked past his shop, staring through the window like the place held magic. He thought of Lily, watching him with pride, as he adjusted a carburetor with the same care some men reserved for family portraits. This was never about business, never about profit. It was about giving others the thing he never had, a chance. Construction started 2 weeks later. Half the town showed up with pizza and paintbrushes. Malene worked beside them, elbow-deep in sawdust, laughing with Ellie and Lily as they helped stencil the new sign. Collins Garage and Trade School built with grit, fueled by second chances. Jack didn't feel like a mechanic standing in a fancy new building. He felt like a man finally living the kind of story he used to think belonged to someone else. The trip wasn't planned. It didn't come with an itinerary or a hotel reservation. Just a Saturday morning, 2 travel mugs of coffee, and the soft rustle of leaves whispering it was time to go somewhere, anywhere, that didn't smell like oil or deadlines. Jack packed light. Malene didn't pack at all. Ellie grabbed a stuffed animal, Lily brought her sketchbook, and the 4 of them piled into Jack's truck like they'd done it 100 times. They drove north, past rows of cornfields and sleepy gas stations, until the scenery blurred into rolling hills and quiet lakes that looked like they'd been waiting for company. The windows stayed down the whole way. Lily made a playlist. Ellie sang off-key. Malene laughed more in 1 hour than she had all month. Jack kept one hand on the wheel and the other resting gently between the seats, where hers eventually found it without a word. They stopped for pie at a diner shaped like a train car, played I Spy through a stretch of winding roads that smelled like pine and wood smoke. Ellie fell asleep mid-sentence, and Lily used her as a pillow. By the time they reached a quiet overlook, a patch of sky and silence stitched into the side of a hill, the sun had begun to dip, casting gold over everything. Jack turned off the engine. The world held still. The girls tumbled out and ran toward a wooden fence that framed the valley. Malene stayed seated for a moment longer, staring out the windshield like she didn't want to break the spell. Then she said it, softly, simply. "This feels like life." Jack looked at her. Not glamour, not noise, not a headline, just air and laughter and the warmth of someone choosing to be right here instead of anywhere else. "Yeah," he said, "it really does." And for once they didn't have to name it. They were already living it. It happened on a Tuesday, no holiday, no big event. Just an ordinary morning in the Turner household. Cereal bowls clinking, mismatched socks on the floor, and Jack trying to coax Lily's ponytail into something that resembled intentional. Lily was halfway out the door when she remembered her lunchbox. She ran back in, grabbed it from the counter, and tossed Jack a quick kiss on the cheek. "Bye, Dad. Love you." He waved, watching her go, heart full from the normalcy of it all. After everything, spotlights, scandals, second chances, this was the miracle, their life, messy and beautiful and uninterrupted. That afternoon, when he picked her up from school, Lily climbed into the truck, beaming. "Miss Malene packed my lunch today," she said, swinging her legs. Jack raised an eyebrow. "She did?" "Yep, peanut butter and banana. She even cut it into hearts. And there was a note." She pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her jacket pocket, smoothing it out before handing it over. Jack unfolded it slowly. "Would it be okay if I stayed a little longer? M." That was it. No question mark about marriage, no diamond, no speech, just a line written in Malene's calm, unmistakable handwriting. And yet, somehow, it said everything. He sat there for a long moment, the note warm from Lily's coat and a little sticky from a juice box leak. Lily tilted her head. "So, are you going to say yes?" Jack smiled, the kind that came from deep down, where truth lived untouched by pride or fear. "I already did," he said, tucking the note into his chest pocket. Later that night, when Malene stepped through the door, Jack didn't say a word. He just kissed her in the doorway, soft and sure. No ring, no plan. Just 2 people who'd weathered the noise, the silence, and everything in between, and still found their way back to each other. And in that quiet kitchen, with grilled cheese on the stove and Lily humming in the next room, staying a little longer didn't feel like a question. It felt like home. The garage smelled like fresh paint and old memories. Jack had power washed the place the night before, scrubbed years of oil stains off the concrete like he was making space for something bigger than engines. Malene brought donuts, still warm from the bakery in town. Lily and Ellie set up a welcome table with juice boxes and stickers that read, "Certified Grease Kid." By noon, half the town had shown up. Neighbors, teachers, a few curious passers-by who remembered the story, the fundraiser, the girl who once stood on this same lot with shoes too big and hope too loud to fit in a single sentence. Jack stood beside Malene, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on the tarp covering the new sign bolted above the garage doors. "Ready?" she asked. He nodded, heart knocking against his ribs. Lily and Ellie did the honors. With a dramatic tug and a synchronized gasp, the tarp came down. The crowd went quiet. Collins and Sinclair, built on trust, driven by grit, home of Lily and Ellie's Lunchbox League. There were cheers, applause. Even Principal Harmon got a little misty-eyed. But Jack? He just looked at Malene. "You kept the name." "Of course I did," she said. "You built this long before I got here. I just added the commas." "And the roof," he said, smirking. She grinned. "Details." Kids ran through the open bay doors, peeking at toolboxes and clapping when Jack handed out mini wrenches wrapped in ribbons. The Lunchbox League, Lily and Ellie's brilliant idea, had its own table now, a donation jar beside it labeled Snacks and Second Chances. Jack looked around, at the shop that no longer felt too small, at the town that had started to understand, at the woman who'd stayed, not to change him, but to stand beside him. And above it all, the sign gleamed. Not a brand, a promise. That even the smallest garage can hold something big, like a future, like a family, like a dream finally coming true, with grease on its hands and a name that meant something. The nomination came scribbled in pencil on the back of a flyer for the school book fair. Jack thought it was a joke at first, something the kids cooked up as part of some inside joke in Lily's class. But then Principal Harmon called to confirm acceptance and said with a chuckle, "Looks like you've been drafted, Mr. Collins. The PTA chair, no less." Jack nearly dropped the wrench in his hand. Him? The guy who once got side-eyed for bringing store-brand juice to field day? The man people whispered about when he couldn't afford last year's pledge? But when he showed up to the meeting that Thursday night, still in his work boots, grease under his nails, no one blinked. In fact, they made room. He didn't come with charts or buzzwords. He came with a clipboard, a genuine smile, and the one thing everyone had learned to trust, follow through. When Jack said he'd fix something, he did, and not just engines anymore. Within a month, the school got new tools for the science room, donated by the shop. The garden behind the cafeteria started producing fresh herbs, thanks to Jack's idea to give the kids something real to grow. He helped fix the broken sink in the art room, rewired the flickering lights in the hallway, even stayed late one night to repair a busted basketball hoop the school couldn't afford to replace. The whispers changed. They weren't sharp anymore. They were grateful. "Ask Jack" became the answer to almost everything. He wasn't flashy. He didn't overtalk. But when the bake sale tent collapsed in the wind, he was the one holding it up. When a shy kid's science project short-circuited 10 minutes before judging, Jack sat with him on the floor until it hummed again. Malene watched from the sidelines, never stepping in, never correcting, just smiling when people finally saw the man she'd seen all along. Lily made a badge out of cardboard that said, "Boss of Everything." Jack wore it to the next PTA meeting, duct-taped to his flannel. And no one laughed, because somewhere along the way, Jack Collins stopped being the mechanic who didn't fit in. He became the man everyone leaned on, and he didn't need a spotlight. He'd become the foundation. The mural stretched across the school's brick wall like a memory made permanent, painted sunflowers, turning wrenches, open books, and two girls holding lunch boxes in one hand and dream blueprints in the other. Their names were written in soft gold above the image, Lily Collins and Ellie Sinclair, the Lunchbox League. Years had passed, but the colors never faded. Lily and Ellie stood there one fall afternoon, now teenagers, taller than the fourth graders who ran giggling across the blacktop. Lily's curls were tied back, paint smudged on her jeans from art class. Ellie wore a hoodie with her name stitched over the pocket. She'd started her own after-school tech club, just like she'd promised. They didn't say much at first, just looked at the mural like it was breathing. Then Ellie nudged her, a crooked smile tugging at her lips. Remember how it started? Lily grinned. With a check, and a dad who never quit. Ellie laughed softly. And a mom who figured out that grilled cheese is a language. They stood there for a moment longer, letting the past ripple gently between them. I still have that note she put in your lunchbox, Ellie said. I still have the scarf you made me, Lily replied. Behind them, the new PTA chair, a third grader's dad, was struggling to untangle a string of lights. Lily turned instinctively to help, just like her dad used to. Ellie followed without hesitation. And the mural stayed behind them, watching, a reminder that the biggest changes don't always start with speeches or plans or perfectly timed headlines. Sometimes they start with a girl who forgot her lunch, a dad who pulled over in the rain, a woman who quietly chose kindness over distance, and two hearts that made space for each other, long before the world knew how to name it. Years later, the girls still remembered it all, because it hadn't been a story about money. It had always been a story about staying.